In order to know what's going to happen with the Mass Effect franchise, you have to consider a number of different factors. And with all due respect to the breadth of content that already exists on the topic, I don't think anyone has comprehensively and calmly laid out the criteria for developing a sound view of what will happen with the future of Mass Effect. As briefly as I can, I'd like to lay out what factors are at play and dispassionately assess what they mean so we can have a clean, objective take on the situation. What conclusion you draw from that is clearly up to you. If you love Andromeda, or if you hate it, if you're excited for Anthem and BioWare's new direction, or you despise it, I'm not trying to change your mind either way. I'm trying to lay out all of the subject matter, to name all of the pieces, to take stock of them, and then to give my theory about how they all mix together and interact. Yes, I'll give a prediction about the future of the Mass Effect franchise, I promise. But there are lots of predictions about the franchise already. So better than simply give a prediction, I'm going to give you sound analysis and evidence, so whatever your prediction is, it's more grounded and more likely to be accurate. Hello and welcome to the Exalted March. Today we're going to be taking a look at 4 primary factors that will decide the future of the Mass Effect franchise. We're not necessarily going to go in order of importance, but instead follow a trail of logic that will more or less take place over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. So, the factors deciding the future of the Mass Effect franchise are 1. What happens with Anthem, and to a lesser extent 2. What happens with Dragon Age 4, 3. How valuable will Mass Effect's brand be in the future, and 4. How will Mass Effect fit into EA's company strategy at the time? That's it. Those are the factors that will decide whether we get another Mass Effect game, and to some extent, what sort of Mass Effect game we get. I'll dive into each of these in more depth in just a second, but first, let's be clear about what isn't a primary factor. Mass Effect Andromeda, love it or hate it, reactions, positive or negative, on social media, and in particular, YouTube trends and creators declaring either Mass Effect is dead or, no really, Andromeda wasn't that bad. None of these will decide the fate of Mass Effect. Andromeda is most recent, so it seems most relevant, but from a business standpoint, this view isn't nearly comprehensive enough, and the people actually making business decisions that affect Mass Effect will know that. Just as an example, even if everyone who played Andromeda absolutely hated the game, it's still a multi-million-dollar franchise with licensing potential for merchandise and spin-off media, and a track record of successful games in the past. Not even attempting to make money off of the brand is a total waste. Conversely, even if everyone who played Andromeda loved the game, if the unlikely doomsday scenario for BioWare fans comes true, and both Anthem and Dragon Age 4 are colossal failures, the future of the studio gets put into serious jeopardy, in which case another Mass Effect game may never happen. Andromeda's reception will always be taken into account, but it simply isn't a deciding factor in the franchise's future. Okay, that being said, let's look at the 4 factors I named earlier. Number 1 and number 2 are basically the same argument. At present, everything we know about BioWare's distribution of resources suggests that, other than BioWare Austin maintaining Star Wars The Old Republic, BioWare has put everything into Anthem and Dragon Age 4. The way it looks now, Anthem will release first, so most of BioWare's key staff are focused on that, with the rest being placed on DA4 or doing double duty between both. BioWare needs Anthem to succeed. It's had a long development cycle, they've put their best people and a majority of their resources into it, and EA desperately wants to compete in the growing shared world loot shooter genre. If Anthem flops, after Andromeda had a mixed reception, and no current plans exist for more Mass Effect games, that means BioWare's entire lineup of viable hits becomes reduced to just Dragon Age. So that's number 2, Dragon Age 4. It's essentially the same argument as Anthem. By the time a DA4 release rolls around, it will likely be a 3 to 4 year development cycle. If Anthem fails to meet expectations, and then DA4 does the same, I think the fate of BioWare as a studio begins to look grim. They might be given one last chance to develop a hit, but I think it's totally feasible that EA would close down the studio if BioWare's 2 most successful franchises stall out, and they fail to create a popular new one. Now, that does beg an interesting question. What happens if either Anthem or DA4 is a success, but the other one isn't? If Anthem succeeds and DA4 doesn't, that doesn't bode well for Mass Effect. I can see EA pushing BioWare to put all of their eggs in one basket and push more Anthem content, and then maybe develop more new intellectual property. The favorites of Mass Effect and Dragon Age will have gone the way of Baldur's Gate. Now, if Anthem fails and Dragon Age 4 succeeds, that actually isn't bad for Mass Effect. Dragon Age will obviously stick around, but EA will want BioWare to fill the sci-fi hole left by Anthem's failure, and oh, well, would you look at that? Turns out BioWare is already known for making a compelling sci-fi action role-playing game. EA would likely want Mass Effect brought back, but probably with a stronger online component, maybe shared world co-op or more multiplayer focus. To be clear, I'm not saying Anthem failing is good for Mass Effect. The best scenario, by far, is both Anthem and Dragon Age 4 succeeding. If that were the case, BioWare may even be able to put together the budget for a long 5-year development cycle to properly get Mass Effect back on its feet. Moving on, the next two factors are more about corporate strategy, namely, number 3, Mass Effect's brand. Right now, Mass Effect is still a valuable brand. As a gamer, you might think that the perceived success or failure of Andromeda is what affects the brand the most. You'd be wrong. It doesn't. Again, we're talking brand from a business standpoint, not a how much does Reddit make fun of it standpoint. If you're at EA and you're trying to assess how valuable of a brand you have, you look at 3 major successes in terms of sales and critical review, 1 subpar release, tons of sales and merchandise, a couple of decent mobile games, a strong following of fandom and social media, 1 movie option deal with a major Hollywood production company, and lots of interest in potentially doing a TV or Netflix series. You have a strong brand on your hands. At some point in the next couple of years, someone at EA is going to say, hey, why aren't we doing anything with Mass Effect? We own this IP, let's make money off of it. When EA bought BioWare in 2007, they paid $860 million for the studio, and the rights to all of their intellectual properties. Even in the worst case scenario of BioWare as a studio completely going under, which I don't think will happen, EA will still own the IP for Mass Effect, and it wouldn't make sense not to use it. They want as much return on investment from that BioWare purchase as they can possibly get. Lastly, number 4, we have to consider how Mass Effect will fit into EA's strategy at the time. Whether it's next year or several years from now, if EA starts considering how to bring back Mass Effect, it will have to fit into their broader corporate strategy. Right now, their corporate strategy is to create a constant flow between them and the consumers by delivering games as a service. You don't just buy a game from them once, you perpetually buy the game from them. Maybe they continue that strategy for the foreseeable future, maybe they don't. But whatever their strategy, Mass Effect has to fit into it. As an example, maybe in the future EA decides to only focus on licensed properties, only Madden, FIFA, and Star Wars. Well, no room for Mass Effect in their lineup. Maybe they decide to only do MMOs and always online games, and BioWare can't or won't find a way to shoehorn Mass Effect into that mold. No Mass Effect then either. If things stay relatively the same, I think Mass Effect will be brought back, but with a much more involved online component. Ultimately, that's my current prediction. It will take years before we see a new Mass Effect release, but as long as BioWare has some success with their next couple of releases, and the Mass Effect brand stays as strong as it's been, EA will bring back Mass Effect, albeit slightly more tailored to microtransactions. There have been a lot of videos on YouTube giving predictions about the future of the Mass Effect franchise. Some of them have been really good. Others have been terrible. Mostly there seems to be a serious disconnect between how we feel about Andromeda and an understanding of the business components involved in greenlighting a project that's hopefully going to be profitable. Executive leadership in EA have already expressed a desire to see Mass Effect return, so that's good. They'll place all of their resources accordingly to give that possibility the best chance of coming to fruition. But there are no guarantees. EA is a business, and so is BioWare. They will assess, explore, test, and measure. They will act far more rationally than they're given credit for, and far more rationally than most of us, who stand to gain something from clickbait titles and lose nothing from faulty, overflung wild predictions of disastrous failure for the Mass Effect franchise. The future of Mass Effect will unravel, for better or worse, over the course of the next few years. In that time span, public opinion will see significant shifts more than once. But unless new major developments occur, the factors that I laid out in this video will continue to decide what's going to actually happen, not the latest trend of hype or hate that spins itself up on Reddit or YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you continue to come back for more reasonable analysis of BioWare, EA, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, and even Anthem when it comes out. Please see my playlist called The Relay for critical analysis of cinematic aesthetics in Mass Effect and Dragon Age, and check out my podcast, Split the Veil, that I do monthly with fellow YouTuber Gilder Thalin, in which we discuss all things BioWare. Masaranis, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and until next time.